Hi, I'm Ashley and welcome to my channel. In today's video we are going to go through all the books that I read in September and October, and there is quite a few of them. So first we're going to talk about the 8 books I read in September, and I reread 3 books in September, so I'm going to go over those 3 first. The first 2 books I reread were volumes 1 and 2 of Spy Family. And I feel like if you read manga or watch anime, then you definitely are either reading or watching this show or have at least heard of it. And I feel like even people who don't read a lot of manga have still heard of this. So I'm not really going to go over it very much in very much detail. I'm going to say it is a very cute and wholesome show, and I decided to reread these 2 because the new season of the anime just started coming out in fall. And just reading these just always puts a smile on my face and puts me in a good mood. So that's those. And then my other reread was Crumbs, which is a graphic novel. And this is also a super cute and sweet story. And the artwork in this one is stunning and gives off super cozy vibes. And Rei is a seer, and she has the power to see the present, which is actually a unique ability because a lot of seers just see the future. And then our other main character is Lori, and he works at a bakery that belongs to his aunt. And the bakery isn't an ordinary bakery. It's a bakery where the baked goods are infused with different emotions. So you can buy, say, a muffin that has the essence of romance in it. And so Rei frequently goes to this bakery where Lori works, and through there they end up meeting and dating, and just goes through them trying to realize their dreams and figuring out what they want in life and how their relationship fits into that. So I would definitely recommend this if you're looking for a fast and very cute and cozy and comforting read. So for the rest of the books that I read in September, I'm actually going to talk about them in order of least favorite to favorite. And even my least favorite book I still enjoyed, so there's no books in September that I didn't enjoy. So the next book I'm going to talk about is actually a book that I borrowed from the library, so I no longer have it in my possession, but is Where Darkness Blooms by Andrea Hanna. And this one was a thriller / YA mystery. And I don't usually read that many thrillers or mysteries, but I find myself being drawn to them during the spooky season. So that's why I picked this one up, because I was craving something a little spooky. So this book follows 4 teenage girls. A couple years prior to the story starting, their mothers just disappeared, and everyone figures that their mothers are dead because in this town, like, women and girls just disappear and turn up dead, and it's kind of become like a normal thing, even though it really shouldn't be normalized. So these 4 girls have been dealing with that and just trying to make it through their lives, and they really only now have each other to rely on. And this town where they live is the town of Bishop, and it is isolated from the rest of the world because it is surrounded by sunflower fields. And these sunflowers, like, they come across as creepy in the book, and the whole entire time you're reading the book you're trying to figure out what is happening, what is going on with these sunflowers. And the other thing that's also kind of supernatural is the wind. And then the story pretty much follows the 4 girls and them starting to unravel the secrets behind the disappearance of all the women in their town. And so it's a very gripping read, and I read this one in a single day because I just had to keep reading because I had to know what was happening, exactly what was going on, what was up with the sunflowers, are the mothers really dead? And it's just very fast paced. And I wouldn't say it was a favorite read, but it was good. Probably not something I would reread, but I would definitely recommend it if you are looking for a YA mystery thriller, and especially good for spooky season. So the next book is one that I have heard about since last year, and it just kept popping up in the book community, and I finally caved in and read it, and that was Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. And first of all, this one is really very much outside what I usually read. I think this is classified as literary fiction, but one of the main reasons I picked it up is because, first of all, everyone was talking about it and it's a lot of people's favorite book, and second of all, there is a point of view in here from an octopus. So that really grabbed my attention, and I can confirm that it's just as weird and wonderful as it sounds. And the octopus's point of view was definitely a highlight of this book for me. Besides the octopus's point of view, you also get the viewpoint of Tova, who is an elderly woman. She's either 79 or 80, I can't quite remember. But she works at this aquarium every night where the octopus lives because she does it as something to do to keep herself busy because her husband passed away a few years prior, and her only son that they had passed away when he was 18. And there's like a lot of mystery surrounding her son's death, and no one really knows exactly what happened to him. And then in addition to Tova's point of view, you also get the point of view of Cameron, who is a 30-year-old guy, and he has kind of had a tough life all his life, and he actually ends up going to Tova's town because he is trying to track down his birth father. So the story pretty much follows the three of them, and you get to try to figure out exactly how they're all connected. And you get to see them form relationships with each other. And I just thought this book was very heartwarming and endearing on a whole, and I just really loved the twist of getting an octopus's point of view. So the next book is House of Roots and Ruin, and this was an anticipated read for me because this is a companion novel to House of Salt and Sorrows, and that one was a mystery with a girl named Annalie trying to find out why her sisters keep dying. And that one had very much Gothic, spooky vibes to it. And this one followed the youngest sister of Annalie. And this also had spooky vibes to it for sure. And I very much enjoyed this. And the ending of this, oh my gosh, the ending. I still think about this ending, even though I read this in September and now it's November. So it's like 2 months later, and I still think about the ending of this book. I will say that while House of Salt and Sorrows was definitely focused very much on the mystery aspect, and I feel like that was the main focus of it. Like, there was some romance in it, but it wasn't really the main focus. It was kind of just in the background. And also the same thing, like, you get to know some characters, but the book didn't really focus on that much character development. And also, that one was very fast-paced. Whereas this one, I feel like it's slower paced in the beginning. And this one's very much more character focused. And the romance in this one is more at the forefront of the book because the mystery and the romance are pretty much entwined and you can't really separate them. And I really love getting to know more about Verity, especially now that she is older and not, because in the first book she was only 6 and now in here she is either 17 or 18. However, like the first one, you get to a certain point in this one where things just keep happening, getting crazier and crazier, and then you don't want to put this book down. And then at the end, things just like explode into insanity. Like, if you haven't read this and you've liked House of Salt and Sorrows, or even if you haven't read House of Salt and Sorrows, I still recommend this. Because I think you don't necessarily have to read House of Salt and Sorrows to read this. Like, it will be to your benefit because there's a little bit of this book it talks about, especially at the beginning, it talks a little bit about what happens in House of Salt and Sorrows. And if you do want to read House of Salt and Sorrows and you haven't read it yet and you also want to read this, I would recommend reading House of Salt and Sorrows first before this, because this will ruin the plot twist of House of Salt and Sorrows a little bit. So yeah, that's House of Roots and Ruin. Right, and speaking of romance, the next book was definitely more romance, specifically more smut than it was plot, but I still enjoyed like every moment of it. And that was Fall of Ruin and Wrath by Jennifer Armentrout. So this is the first book in her new series, and it did not disappoint because Jennifer Armentrout is like, her books are guilty pleasures of mine. I love her from Blood and Ash series. It's one of my favorite series. And so this one did not disappoint. I devoured this book. And I would say if you like From Blood and Ash or the prequel series, then you'll probably like this. If you don't like those, then this probably isn't the book for you. And this book follows Callista, who goes by Leah to most people. And she lives in a world that was destroyed by the gods, and now only 9 cities remain. And she has a special power which is called her intuition, and pretty much is a voice that warns her about things. One day, her intuition warns her about this traveling prince, and it tells her that today he'll bring her joy, but someday he'll be her doom. And she ends up saving this prince, and he actually turns out not to be human at all. He turns out to be a highborn, but their main thing is that they feed off of pleasure. And of course, he ends up being the love interest. And as always, the love interest is very much swoon-worthy. And then the banter, as always, between the love interest and Callista is also A+. And I did find like the world building at the beginning to be a little complicated, but I just keep reading and eventually it sorts itself out for me. And as usual, this book ended on an evil cliffhanger. And I finished it and was just like, that's not nice, but I can't say I'm surprised. So I will most definitely be continuing this series whenever that next book comes out, which probably won't be for a while. But that was Fall of Ruin and Wrath. And then my last book for my September reads, and my favorite book of the month, was One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. So this is one that's just been popping up everywhere lately in the reading community the past couple of months. And this one did not disappoint. I love this one so much. It was definitely a 5-star read for me. And it is a Gothic fantasy romance. And my favorite thing was definitely the romance in this between our main character Elspeth and the love interest Raven. And there's definitely enemies to lovers vibes in this, but not quite enemies to lovers, but the vibes are there. And I just love their romance. Like, it's angsty and then it just becomes so adorable and precious by the end. So this book follows Elspeth. She's our main character, and she has this thing where she lives with a monster in her head. And in this world, there's this sickness that children get, and if you get it, you end up like developing a magic power, but the magic power comes at a cost, and usually it's something debilitating. And so Elspeth had gotten this illness when she was younger, and if you have this illness, someone is supposed to report you to the king, because the king has this whole group of people that just find the sick children and kill them. But her father sent her to live with her uncle so that they wouldn't find her, and so she could not be killed. And then also, there is also a magic system in this book that involves cards, and each card has like a different power. For example, the Scythe card allows you to control people. And so I very much love this, and my only regret is that it sat on my bookshelf for about a year before I read it. And then the ending of this, oh my gosh, another evil cliffhanger ending. So yeah, that was One Dark Window, and I would say is definitely where all the hype it has been getting lately. So those are all the books I read in September, so let's now move on to October. So in October, I only read 4 books, but all these books were amazing, and all of them were at least 4 stars. So again, I'm going to start with my least favorite and work up to my favorite of the month. So the first one was The Only Purple House in Town by Anne Aguirre. And this was a very cozy fantasy romance book. The romance in this was super adorable, and it was told from the dual perspectives of our 2 main characters, Iris and Ellie. And in this book, like, the supernatural creatures live among humans, and the humans know about their existence, which wasn't always the case. But I guess the witches were the ones to reveal themselves, and then other supernatural creatures followed. But as a result of that, not all humans like the supernatural creatures, and some of them mistrust them and have formed like organizations against them. And our main character Iris comes from a family of vampires, and her mother and her sister all have special powers as vampires. And they aren't the traditional blood-sucking vampires. They are vampires that feed on human emotion. Like, one of her sisters feeds off of grief and the other one feeds off of anger. But Iris has never manifested any of these powers, and it's always been a sore spot for her. Because of this, her mother kind of like looks down upon her, so she doesn't have the greatest relationship with her mother. And her father is a normal human, but he kind of just goes along with whatever the mother says. So Iris' life has been tough and she's kind of down on her luck. Her jewelry making business that she started isn't doing very well. She's behind on rent. But then her great aunt Gertie passes away and she actually leaves Iris her house. And this is like perfect timing because now Iris has somewhere to live. And so Iris goes and moves to a different town and moves into this house. And it's a really big house, so she has the idea of fixing up the rooms and renting them to other people. And the first person to actually rent a room by accident is Ellie, our other main character and the love interest for Iris. And the thing is, at some point Ellie and Iris went to the same school when they were younger. And Ellie always used to get bullied by other kids when he was younger. And there was an incident when Iris stood up for him. And he has always remembered that and always remembered her. But it seems like she doesn't really remember him. So he accidentally ends up renting a room in the house. And also, Ellie himself isn't quite human either. He is a shifter and can shift into a hawk. And so the story follows Iris and Ellie and them getting to know each other. And also, though, other people move into the house as well. And you kind of get this found family trope going on. And it's just so wholesome and heartwarming to read about. And it very much gave me vibes like the Very Secret Society of Regular Witches did. So if you enjoyed that book, I would definitely read this one. And this one was a 4-star for me. My only complaint was I could see the romantic drama coming from like miles away. But again, it's a romance book, so usually that's what happens with the main conflict. It's just something that's usually you can see coming from really far away. So next we have Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillick. So this is the sequel to One Dark Window that I read in September. And I very much enjoyed this. And I thought this was like an awesome conclusion to the series. But I just didn't quite love it as much as the first one. So One Dark Window was all told from Elspeth's point of view. But this one had multiple perspectives. And I understood why it had multiple perspectives because in this book, Elspeth isn't really in the position to be the main character anymore. And so we got Raven's perspective too. And I really loved his perspective. But then also we get the perspective of Elm. And Elm is Raven's cousin. And he's also one of the king's sons. And I really loved his character in the first one. But I just feel like I cared more about Elspeth and Raven's story. Because the main reason I loved One Dark Window was the romance. Like, the magic system was really cool. The plot was interesting. Elspeth's whole predicament with the monster living in her mind was very interesting. But I loved it because of the romance. That was why it was a 5-star reading for me. And in this one, you don't get as much of that. Like, it's there a little bit, but it can't really be the main focus because of Elspeth's situation. So that's why I think Elm comes in, and we have perspectives from him, and there is a romance with him and someone else. And I like that romance. I thought it was very well done, and that he went for a lot of character growth, as did the person that's his love interest. But I was just slightly more interested in Elspeth and Raven's story. That being said, I still very much enjoyed this, but this is definitely a duology that I would definitely recommend. And if you haven't read it yet and it sounds like something you'd be interested, then I would check it out. Next book is Bring Me Your Midnight by Rachel Griffin. And this one I was a little nervous going into because I have heard some reviews of people who didn't quite enjoy this. But I'm very happy to say that I very much enjoyed this. Like, I actually loved this. And this was a 5-star for me, which made me really happy. My favorite part was definitely the romance between our main character, Tanya, and Wolf. And again, it was kind of an enemies to lovers vibe because Tanya is a witch and she practices a certain type of magic, but the type of magic that Wolf practices is dark magic. So her people and his people don't really get along because they both follow two different philosophies in life. And I just loved, like, the romance was angsty and it made me feel things, so that's a win for me. And also, I just really love Rachel Griffin's writing. Like, I also loved Nature of Witches, her first book, and then I also enjoyed Wild as the Witch. Although I found that I actually enjoyed Bring Me Your Midnight more than Wild as the Witch. And I'm not sure if I enjoyed this one more than I did Nature of Witches, because it's been a while since I read Nature of Witches. But I love that one. I also love this one. Also, another thing in this book that I really liked is that the relationship between Tanya and her best friend was also really well done and very heartwarming too. And just a little bit about what this is about. So Tanya lives on an island with others of her kind, and then the mainland is where the normal people live, the non-witches, and they often come over to the island in order to experience magic, but all the magic that Tanya's people practice is just like small magic. Like, for example, Tanya's best friend, her family runs a tea shop, and so they put a little bit of magic into their different tea blends. However, since they only use the small magic, magic builds up in their system, and they have to release this magic every full moon. But Tanya unfortunately misses releasing her magic one night, and by not releasing her magic she could die. So she's trying to figure out a way to solve this problem without worrying her parents, and she ends up running into Wolf, and he practices what she has been told is dark magic, and he says that he will help her not die by releasing her magic, but he will not release her magic, but he will not help her release her magic into the ocean. Instead, he will teach her how to use it and release her magic that way. So the two of them end up becoming uneasy allies, and then friends, and then something more. So yeah, so that was Bring Me Your Midnight. So the final book I read in October, and my favorite, and another 5-star read for me, was The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This was a romance book with just a bit of a supernatural twist because our main character can see ghosts. And our main character is Florence Day, and she is a ghostwriter for a very popular romance author. And at the beginning of the book, she has a deadline on a book that she is currently writing, and she just hasn't been able to write the book, and so she wants an extension. But her editor, who is a new editor for her, will just not give her the extension. And so she has that meeting, and then not too long after that she ends up having to go home because she finds out that her father suddenly passed away. But when she gets home, her editor ends up showing up, and she realizes that now he is a ghost, even though she just saw him healthy the previous day. So this book was very cute and sweet and a lot of fun. It did have some heavy moments with the topic of losing a loved one and figuring out how to process and deal with the grief that accompanies that. But overall, it was a very cozy and comforting read. Oh, and on a side note, there is a song that the main character mentions a couple times that her father also always used to listen to, called Build Me Up Buttercup, and it's an actual song because I looked it up after reading this and I was like, oh, I've actually heard this song before, so that's pretty cool. So I definitely recommend this if you are looking for a cute romance with a bit of a supernatural twist. So those are all the books I read in September and October. I would say both months were solid reading months. Even though I read less books in October than September, I feel like all the books I read in October were awesome. Let me know down below if you read any of these books and what you thought of them. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!